Have you ever wondered if the biggest obstacle in your life isn't actually your problems, but your attachment to them? At first, that sounds ridiculous. After all, nobody wants anxiety, stress, heartbreak, self-doubt, or suffering. Most of us spend years trying to escape our problems. We read books, watch videos, seek advice, and tell ourselves that one day we'll finally be free. But then something strange happens. The opportunity to change appears, and we hesitate. The opportunity to let go appears, and we resist. The opportunity to move forward appears, and somehow we stay exactly where we are. Why? Because some problems eventually become more than problems. They become identities. Have you ever met someone who talks about the same pain for years? The same betrayal, the same failure, the same disappointment. Over time, the wound becomes part of who they are. Without it, they wouldn't know themselves. And that's where Lao Tzu's wisdom becomes deeply uncomfortable. What if you're not holding on to your problems because they're too heavy? What if you're holding on to them because they're familiar? Because pain you've known for years feels safer than a future you've never experienced. Today, we're going to explore one of the deepest psychological traps in human nature. Why people unconsciously cling to suffering, why letting go is often harder than holding on, and how Lao Tzu's ancient wisdom can help you break free from the identity you've built around your struggles. Because sometimes the prison door is already open. We're just afraid to walk out. What if I told you that the biggest obstacle in your life isn't your problems, but your attachment to them? At first, that sounds absurd. After all, who would willingly hold on to anxiety, self-doubt, heartbreak, stress, or suffering? Most people spend years trying to escape their problems. They read books, watch motivational videos, seek advice, and promise themselves that one day things will finally be different. Yet despite all these efforts, many find themselves trapped in the same patterns, repeating the same emotional struggles, carrying the same wounds, and telling the same stories year after year. Why does this happen? Why do so many people remain stuck even when opportunities for change appear right in front of them? According to the wisdom of Lao Tzu, the answer may be far more uncomfortable than we realize. Sometimes our problems stop being problems and become part of our identity. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack every day for years. At first, the weight feels unbearable. Your shoulders ache, your back hurts, and all you can think about is putting it down. But over time, something strange happens. You get used to the weight. You learn how to walk with it. You organize your life around it. Eventually, it becomes so familiar that you forget what it feels like to live without it. Now imagine someone comes along and says, "Why don't you just put it down?" Suddenly, you hesitate. Not because you can't, but because you've carried it for so long that it feels like a part of you. This is exactly what happens with many emotional burdens. Anxiety, insecurity, resentment, fear, and old wounds can become so familiar that they no longer feel like things we carry. They begin to feel like who we are. Lao Tzu understood that human beings often cling to familiar suffering because the unknown feels more frightening than the pain they already understand. We like to think we want freedom, but freedom requires change, and change requires uncertainty. The known may be painful, but at least it is predictable. The unknown, even when it holds the possibility of happiness, can feel terrifying. This is why many people stay in situations that no longer serve them. They remain in unhealthy relationships, hold on to old grudges, and repeat self-destructive patterns. It's not because they enjoy suffering. It's because suffering has become familiar. And familiarity creates attachment. Think about how many people define themselves by their struggles. Some define themselves by their anxiety. Others define themselves by a heartbreak they experienced years ago. Some build their entire identity around being misunderstood, unlucky, or damaged. At first, these are simply experiences. But over time, they become stories. And eventually, those stories become identities. The problem is that once a struggle becomes part of your identity, letting it go can feel like losing a piece of yourself. If you've spent years telling yourself that you're anxious, who are you without anxiety? If you've spent years identifying as a victim of circumstance, who are you without that story? These questions are uncomfortable because they force us to confront a deeper truth. Sometimes we aren't afraid of our problems. We're afraid of who we might become without them. One of the greatest paradoxes of human nature is that people often prefer familiar pain over unfamiliar freedom. Consider how many individuals stay trapped in situations they know are unhealthy simply because they fear the uncertainty of change. The pain becomes predictable. The suffering becomes routine. It feels safer to remain in a prison you understand than to step into a future you cannot control. Lao Tzu taught that life is like a river, constantly moving and changing. The river never clings to the water that has already passed. It continues flowing. Yet human beings often do the opposite. We cling to old identities, old fears, old disappointments, and old stories. We hold on to experiences long after they have served their purpose. Imagine holding a burning piece of coal in your hand. It hurts. It damages you. It causes suffering. Yet you refuse to let go. Why? Because you've held it for so long that the pain has become familiar. This is how many people treat their emotional wounds. They revisit the same memories, replay the same disappointments, and carry the same burdens year after year. The wound becomes a companion. The suffering becomes part of the story they tell themselves about who they are. And without realizing it, they begin protecting the very thing that hurts them. Lao Tzu's wisdom invites us to ask a difficult question. Who would you be without your problems? Take a moment to truly consider that. Who would you be without the insecurity you've carried for years? Who would you be without the resentment, the fear, the anxiety, or the self-doubt? Many people struggle to answer because they have become so identified with their suffering that they can no longer imagine themselves apart from it. Yet this question is incredibly important because it reveals where attachment exists. It reveals the stories we are afraid to release. The truth is that your problems may have once served a purpose. Anxiety may have protected you from danger. Anger may have helped you survive difficult circumstances. Fear may have kept you cautious when caution was necessary. But what protects you in one season of life can imprison you in another. There comes a time when every person must decide whether they will continue carrying an old burden or finally put it down. Growth begins when we recognize that our experiences are not our identity. The pain happened to you, but it is not you. The failure happened to you, but it is not you. The heartbreak happened to you, but it is not you. One of the greatest acts of courage is refusing to define yourself by your suffering. In a world that often encourages people to build identities around their wounds, choosing to let go can feel radical. Yet true healing requires exactly that. Healing is not just the removal of pain. It is the release of the identity built around that pain. It is the willingness to stop introducing yourself through your struggles and start discovering who you are beyond them. Nature provides a beautiful lesson here. Trees do not cling to dead leaves. Rivers do not hold onto yesterday's water. Seasons do not resist change. Nature understands that growth requires release. But human beings often try to hold on to everything. We cling to old versions of ourselves long after they have stopped serving us. We carry emotional baggage that should have been left behind years ago. And then we wonder why life feels heavy. Lao Tzu reminds us that freedom is not about becoming someone else. It is about letting go of what you are not. The more unnecessary burdens you release, the lighter life becomes. Not because problems disappear completely, but because you stop allowing them to define who you are. You stop building your identity around your pain. You stop carrying stories that no longer belong to you. So today, ask yourself a simple but powerful question. What problem have I turned into an identity? What story have I carried for so long that it feels like part of me? What burden am I secretly afraid to release because I no longer know who I would be without it? The answer may reveal the very thing standing between you and freedom. The wisdom of Lao Tzu teaches us that the greatest prison is often not built by circumstances but by attachment. The door may already be open. Freedom may already be available. But to walk through that door, you must be willing to leave something behind. An old wound, an old fear, an old story, an old version of yourself. And when you finally do, you may discover that the person you've been searching for was there all along, waiting beneath the fear, beneath the suffering, and beneath the identity you no longer need. The moment you let go of what you are not, you create space for who you truly are. And that, perhaps, is the deepest wisdom Lao Tzu ever offered. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. What was the most powerful lesson from this video? Was it the idea that our problems become our identity, or that familiar pain can feel safer than freedom? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and want more timeless wisdom from Lao Tzu and ancient philosophy, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Remember, sometimes the greatest freedom comes not from solving your problems, but from letting go of the identity built around them. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay curious, stay mindful, and take care.